Okay. I want to talk Denver here for a second. I think this is a good time to basically reflect upon what's been happening with the Broncos. Okay. The Broncos season sums it up in a few words is that it's become combative, and it's also become something where it's been a sinking ship that they've been literally plugging away all the holes that seems to be getting water into the ship before it starts to sink. Sean Payton was hired for a few reasons. One, to fix Russ, one, to reshape the culture, and one, to bring hope to Bronco fans that this team can get to the playoffs. That's what Sean Payton has always been about. You may not like Sean Payton's attitude, like his coaching mentality. You may not like it. You may not understand it, but it still is something that helps to build a winning team. Russell Wilson, in the last few years, you could obviously see there's a decline there. Okay. And again, I don't think Russ is washed, but I do think there's a slight decline. Whether that came from, Seattle knew about it early on with Pete Carroll and John Snyder and everybody else in that building, whether they knew it early on, or maybe it's because Russ, he got paid all this money, he's sitting on it, and then, his wife's making a lot more than he is with all those deals, and then also maybe potentially moving him to Vegas with the Raiders, seeing if he matches that culture. There's been a lot of rumors about it. It would be a slam dunk for Sierra. But all I know is that for years and years and years, I've watched the NFL and I've followed up amongst a bunch of teams' histories. The Denver Broncos, to a certain extent and honesty, they do not like drafting and developing quarterbacks. I don't know what their problem has been the last few years, but they don't like drafting and developing quarterbacks. They don't give them a fair shot. The last time, and Bronco fans know this, that they have drafted and developed a quarterback was a guy named John Elway. Still, you still respect him. You still love him. Because you drafted, developed him, a kid out of Stanford, that this kid was going to obviously be a really good quarterback prospect, and he has been like that for years. Whether that was during the Orange Crush, or maybe it was during the days when he made the Super Bowls. He didn't win them yet until later on in his career. But that was the last time you drafted and developed a quarterback, was John Elway. Everybody else, if you look through the list of what Denver quarterbacks who basically have come into that building and have basically been drafted and developed, there's been not a whole lot. Maybe Brian Greasy. That's it. All the quarterbacks, I could have a long list of it. But the quarterbacks off the top of my head that I know that are not drafted and developed in this organization: Jake Plummer, Kyle Orton, Teddy Bridgewater, Peyton Manning. There's so many different quarterbacks that were up and on this list, but those are the four that I could think of right off the top of my head. Joe Flacco was another one. The ones you drafted and developed, you had no faith for. That was Drew Lock. That was Paxton Lynch. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I might have it wrong if people can correct me, but Trevor Siemian, maybe? He was another draft and developed. The funny thing is that you drafted and developed Jay Cutler, but shipped him off early to Chicago. Now he's a Chicago great quarterback next to Jim McMahon. So my point is that Denver is so scared and they don't like to draft and develop quarterbacks. I don't know what the problem is. But listen, the NFL's not perfect. Quarterbacks are not perfect. If you drafted and developed a quarterback, at least giving him the fair shot, maybe he might turn out to be a superstar. But look at what the draft is giving you. It's giving you Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Jaden Daniels. There might even be a couple quarterbacks that are in the middle of that mix. But you clearly can't stand Russ. You clearly don't want to deal with Russ. So you want to ship him up out of town, get a trade, get some draft picks, but it's only going to take as much as it takes for him to get out of town. It's not going to be easy. Denver made these mistakes. First of all, you traded Russell Wilson for Russell Wilson. You paid him early without even hitting the field and actually seeing how he produces. You then hire a coach who was clearly off his skis, and apparently Aaron Rodgers seems to be defending him so much that he's not exactly an NFL head coach caliber. He's not. Nate Hackett is clearly not the guy. And then says how great of an offensive, innovator he is. Come on. I'm not playing this manipulation crap. Nate Hackett was clearly off his skis, doesn't even know how to do clock management, and at the same time, it was making Russ decline drastically. Now, in comes Sean Payton. They go to make it up, and Russ did look a little like himself, not so washed, but the relationship seemed combative, and it seemed so rocky. It's rockier than the Rocky Mountains out here. But Russell Wilson, to an extent, I know what a lot of people are thinking, and I know exactly what I'm going to say. But this relationship doesn't work. And Denver's got great players. They've got really good players. I like that Dulcich kid that I think is going to be really good. Greg Dulcich, he's going to be really good. It depends on how Tim Patrick's health is going to look like next season. But I could trust Cortland Sutton. I can trust Jerry Jeudy. I could trust Marvin Mims. I could trust at least, Patrick Surtain. So all this stuff for Denver, you've got to make it right. But you have the coach. The coach is not the problem. Your problem is your quarterback. I liked Russ at the time in Seattle. Once he drastically declined, it was not the same. Not the same Russell Wilson. It's making now Denver look bad in their own division, where now you have Jim Harbaugh in LA with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. He's probably primed to go on an MVP year. Then you've got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and then you've got the Raiders knocking on your door with Antonio Pierce. So Denver has a lot to think about throughout this offseason when it comes to the free agent market, when it comes to maybe possibly making trades. You may have to give up at least some pieces, and then you've got the draft. Because to me personally, if you really, really cannot trust Russ, and at the same time, you're kind of fed up and done with it, yeah, you could push hard for a trade. From what I was told from a lot of sources, they were saying from March they might consider cutting Russell Wilson. You might end up having to do that, and you may have to eat that dead money cap. But hopefully they've learned a lesson, because it was a massive mistake. You paid him early. You didn't even get a chance to see him out on the field and see him perform until then. Once he got his contract extension, it looked bad. It looked bad. You got Sean Payton screaming up into his face, not making the plays that he should. And look, he's not obligated to explain why he's screaming and yelling to Russell Wilson, but maybe there is a reason. Maybe there's a reason for it. It's a push. I don't know. But I just think this year with Denver was just so rocky. It was combative, and it did not look like it was in sync. I don't think it's anyone's fault, but I think this is just the reality of it. But I do think that the front offices, and yet they did get rid of their GM and got a new one, they got to fix this mess. And Sean Payton is literally looking at him like, look, I didn't create this mess. You've got to fix it. You went and traded for Russ. You gave him an extension early. Now you got to make this up. Now you got to get this better. Because trust me, I live here now, but if I'm watching, in Denver, if I'm watching over there at Mile High Stadium, and I'm just like, I look at this offense, and this offense looks stagnant, and it doesn't look like it's scoring more than 25 points a game, there's a problem there. I don't think it's the weapons. I don't think, bits and pieces of it. Could be the offensive line, but at the same time, Russ just doesn't look like himself. So I think the best thing that you could possibly do is maybe go and draft a quarterback. Maybe go ahead and light up some fire in the locker room. Oh, I don't know. You could light it up at camp. OTAs. Think about it. Could you imagine if Bo Nix was there in Denver? I think Bo Nix would thrive. I think Bo Nix would be really, really good. Michael Penix, he's strong in the pocket. He's not afraid to throw the ball, and he throws a beautiful pocket passing ball. He does. He does. He's a pure thrower. But this is where Denver really has to think about it. But I think if I'm being honest, this Sean Payton relationship is so combative and rocky, it doesn't work. And I think you really have to give that up. But at the same time, don't be afraid to draft and develop a quarterback. You haven't done this since John Elway. It's okay. Sometimes you may whiff up on a quarterback, but who cares? I mean, I wouldn't feel that embarrassed. I mean, think about it. You got San Francisco who whiffed on Trey Lance, but they got Brock Purdy. Maybe. There's quarterbacks that are going to whiff. It's hard. It's hard to really determine if they're going to be superstars right off the bat. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to see with these quarterback lists. Maybe I might see Drake May not even be his best. Maybe there was somewhere in the scouting report that nobody told me about. I don't know. It's unpredictable. But you got to trust your gut, and you got to go with, okay, I have a really good offensive weaponry. I need to fix up a little bit of my offensive line. I may have to give up some defensive pieces, but making sure they stay strong. And then I'll be able to get the quarterback that can make everything work. I mean, think about it. It's like a well-ran oil machine. You got to make it work. You got to make it work smoothly and efficiently, because sometimes little knickknacks and creaks, I mean, it won't work well. It's just an accident, and it's a collapse that's waiting to happen. But I think Denver really needs to do the right thing, and I think, honestly, drafting and developing is your best option.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows, and also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.